So now we're on Zoom, and then I just do the green.
Now I'll make it big.
Okay, and then
And then you should be able to come down to your toolbar. It should pop up. Nope, not doing it to you. Because do you want to see yourself?
I want to see the full.
Let's put it on the full view, not on the.
Yeah.
Not on Zoom?
Or no, on that. Gives the full view down here.
No, if you.
We'll go back here. I think I can get that part.
Okay.
It's such a, when it's that small,
Oh gosh.
such a pain to see. But that's the place it's supposed to.
There you go. Now up at the top. Oh, that's a little different from what. There should be a full screen view. Let's see.
For this.
So this is the presenter view. They see your this.
Oh,
But
okay.
you see your notes, and then the next slide you're going to.
Oh, good. Okay, that's great. That works even better. Okay,
Thank
good.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So she's not going to be here next week, and I won't either. So I'm going to try to get Amy or Sally to be the tech person to help out. With
To be honest with you, let me check with Weldon. He could probably get by without. So let me see.
Yeah. Then
Let me check with him. Yeah. Okay.
She's got the Zoom on us, aren't we?
No, we're okay then. Great. Good. Thank you.
I'll just do the welcome and the prayer, and then you're on.
Oh dear. I'll do it. Where's the page up machine?
I just use the arrow.
Oh, the arrow. Okay, I can do that. All right, then we're good to go then.
Yeah, so it'd be
Yeah.
one of those.
Okay.
And if you find that it's a hassle, I'll do it. I can hit those, and you can read your
Yeah,
notes.
that's I'm okay. Actually, this is sort of a security blanket for me because I'm not used to speaking. You know, Weldon, you say you've got 30 minutes and he just goes, but I'm not used to that. I'm used to sitting in the corner and writing, so I don't do that much speaking. So.
Well, I've looked through your slides. You've got great stuff to share, so it's gonna be wonderful.
Yeah, I did some research on that. I do. The what we call the resurrection window or the ascension window or second coming, whatever that window is. I've got some other interesting material on that brings me to the point where I think it's not supposed to be anything. That I think it's an enigma. That it's supposed to elicit questions about what is Jesus, why is he here, what's he doing? Because it doesn't fit in any of the other research that I've done on any of the other windows.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then I found a very similar image, but the title of the painting, they all come from paintings, usually from this Nazarene art school. But I found a very similar one, but Jesus' palms are up and out, and the title of the painting is "Coming to Me." But this window has Jesus' arms down, his palms next to his side. And then somebody told me she always thought it was Jesus walking on water. And so I thought, well, maybe that's the point.
It's like a Rorschach for Jesus
Yeah,
stuff.
that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
That's hilarious.
And it even gets even weirder because Gray Lewis, the more I delved into him, he was a real raconteur. He sold men's clothing. And his whole thing for his whole career was image making for men.
Oh,
I found all these old newspaper stories
this
about
is
it.
gonna be great. This will be perfect. That's the kind of stuff we want to hear. You've done the
Well,
work. and
it's
we-
not here. I
Oh,
mean,
but
this
anything
is
you
just
share,
this
yeah.
window. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But so I thought, okay, so what if? What if I mean, if you look at Jesus' robes, they really are nice robes,
He's been suited up there.
Yeah, Gray Lewis sold him his suit.
Without seeing.
That's right. Yeah.
No, we should.
Hidden zipper.
Let me go do a scout out. Here
Sure.
and see if
No,
we can
that's
come in.
fine.
We'll probably start in a couple minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm ready.
And we're actually on Zoom right now, so it's.
Oh, okay.
I kind of had.
I
to
better
get it-
behave.
I had to get it started.
It's okay. It's okay.
So, the folks coming in from 8:30 have just learned who the new priest director is.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to go to the next service don't know.
Right. We're releasing it at 10 a.m. And the reason why we had to time it for when Father Keith was telling his students, that was our problem. That was our challenge. So we knew that the 8:30 crowd was going to get it early, and we thought, well, that's going to be very little crossover. The email and the social media stuff is timed for 10 a.m. and then we can announce it at the 10:30 service.
So those who I won't say anything in here.
I'm sorry.
I won't say anything in here then.
No, they will talk. It's okay because it's it's going to be public record in about 5 minutes. Yeah.
Well, it's so neat that you all chose someone who is part of this clerical. So those of us who are clergy know them really well.
You know, it was an interesting. I have to say we probably talked to 11 or 12 different priests, and it really represented a cross section of America. Some were from out of state, some were from out of the diocese. Men, women, African Americans, and they were all good folks. Good morning.
Good to see you in person.
We've been Zooming.
Oh, I've been zooming. Okay. I'll take a peek at it.
It wasn't working.
Did you turn it on? Did you turn the gas off?
Yeah, it's just a few people getting coffee and stuff.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Everything's on the ranch or the farm or whatever.
It's cold out there this morning.
Oh, I guess so.
Nothing between us
Up,
and North Pole but a barbed wire fence.
Barbara Fitz and Moody. I'd be the one to do Oh, dear.
Well, good morning and welcome. I know this is a morning of big news, so those of you who went to the 8:30 service have all the news. Those of us going later, we'll get it in a few minutes.
You're not gonna share, right?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Well, we're so glad to be able to come back together to Adult Forum and to look at our lessons in our stained glass windows. And very excited to have Patty Benoit here. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, you did good.
Okay. Close. And as we start, let's start with the collect for church musicians and artists. The Lord be with you. O God, whom saints and angels delight to worship in heaven, be ever present with your servants who seek through art and music to perfect the praises offered by your people on earth, and grant to them even now glimpses of your beauty, and make them worthy at length to behold it unveiled forevermore through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. I think we're good.
Okay.
So I believe we're on Zoom,
Okay.
but I'm using this for next week.
Sure.
If Weldon needs some assistance with Zoom, can you have him run the conference?
Okay. Sounds good.
We're good. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. Patty, you are.
Uh-oh, it's the Patty Show. Okay, sorry. Okay. Thank you all for being here. We're going to kind of plod through this. Greetings, Cheryl. Come on in.
Yes. Are you doing the class today?
I am, unfortunately. You can leave now if you want.
Wonderful. It's just I have to be required a little bit. So if I leave, when I leave, it's not because I want to.
Okay. We're going to hold questions. If you'll just hold questions until afterwards, we'll have plenty of time to talk. Okay.
Get it?
We often focus on the historical and religious artifacts in a worship space. And that's important, but the real sacredness is the stories that are connected to them and the connection to people and to their life stories and how these stories reflect their faith stories. And you're going to find that a lot in this building because of its age mostly. But so many of the artifacts that we use in worship, things like the bishop's chair, or the candlesticks, or the chalice, or the windows, are all connected to real human beings and their faith stories and how they express that. So things, the actual artifacts themselves, can come and go. We know it's temporary. It's just stuff. But their stories remain. And so these become sacred relics for our learning and for steering our own faith story. So don't think of the object itself as holy, but think of the story connected to it as being important to remember. And as proof, I refer you to John 1:1, where it says in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so it's really the story, the concept, the words, the ideas that are really important. And so that's what we have to remember when we're talking about these stained glasses. Okay, let me see if I'm going to do this right. Okay, there we go. So in Hebrews, we talk about the great cloud of witnesses, these people who've come before us. And so all that we are today as a Christian community is the sum and the substance of work of those who came before us, and those who helped build this church, who helped sustain it over the last 140-something years, who cared for it, and who helped it grow. So what I'm trying to do today is just kind of put everything in its context and its historical context. So this is what we're talking about. Here's our building. This picture was taken probably about 1906, 07, sometime in there. And this is the way it originally looked. And the window that we're talking about is in the south transept. It's right here. So it was original with the 1905 building. And as you can see, it's a little obscure, but when you get kind of close to it, you can tell, kind of make out part of it. Okay, so here's our window. There were, as David Louth told us a couple of weeks ago, there were hundreds of these stained glass studios up and down the East Coast and the Midwest. And actually from the late 1800s on through World War I. And so we're not really sure where this is manufactured. I've found a couple of interesting leads to help us, maybe a Pennsylvania company, or one from Indiana that I found, but we're just really not sure about this one. What we do know is that these came from catalogs. Stained glass companies produced catalogs, and they were distributed widely. And so this window was probably picked out from a catalog. It was manufactured someplace else, way out of state, and it was shipped down here by rail to be installed by 1905. The original artist is actually an interesting guy by the name of Bernard Plockhorst. Here he is. Copying paintings and reproducing them in stained glass was a very popular way to create these images. And so Plockhorst is part of a group called the Nazarene Art School, or the Nazarene Art Movement. It's not related to the Church of the Nazarene here in the United States. It's a completely different, it's mostly German Protestant evangelicals of the 1800s. And so these artists produced hundreds of these religious paintings. They were all classically trained painters. They were great students of the old masters. Plockhorst himself was a big fan of Rubens. And so he studied Rubens' techniques and Rubens' design and composition. So this religious group was a very influenced also by the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, if you know what that is. But they also showed a great fondness for medieval and classical art. So that's kind of the way Plockhorst went. If you look at the images of Plockhorst and you think about his contemporaries, it's all going to come together, because his contemporaries at the same time are Van Gogh over in the Netherlands, Gustav Klimt down in Austria, Cézanne and Pissarro. So when you look at what Plockhorst is doing, and then you look at, say, what Van Gogh is doing, you see a juxtaposition here. Okay, here is the original painting by Plockhorst. And if you can see, this is the original image. This would have been reproduced hundreds of times, and the images would have been sent to the United States, where stained glass artists would have reproduced this in glass. So this painting was done in 1887, and it's in dozens, in one form or another, it's in dozens and dozens of U.S. churches. It's basically called a narrative painting. It's actually telling the story of the resurrection in chronological order. So let me show you. So first of all, you read it from left to right. There is Golgotha, there are the three crosses. There's an implied path coming from the hill into the tomb. So then the women come in to anoint Jesus' body. They're shocked at what's going on here. There's the angel, and the angel is pointing to the tomb. That is Plockhorst's video. Think of it as a video kind of unrolling the story as he's going. Okay, get back to my notes. Okay, so then you can see the differences. Of course, the painting is a lot more refined. The stained glass company sort of takes it on its own creative ideas to add purple wings, and some of the lines, and that arm looks about 6 feet long, but that's a whole nother issue. Like I said, these windows were bought through catalogs, and so First Presbyterian in Belton also has an identical window. This was a dedication to a little girl who died in 1873, although the window itself was installed in about 1905, 1906. But it's the identical window. Here's a close-up of it. This time, apparently the Belton Presbyterians had more money than we did, so they're adding the image of the three women. But again, it's the identical window. I have talked to someone who's done historical research over there on their window, and she does not know where their window came from. Pardon? They moved to the new church when the new church was built. I think it was in the 70s, wasn't it? Yeah. So that, and this is over the altar at First Presbyterian, if you ever go over there. Okay, this is not the only window that we have by Plockhorst. We've got more Plockhorst. Does this look familiar? This is Plockhorst's rendition of the Good Shepherd, and this is a barefooted Jesus tending his flock in the Tyrolean Alps. Plockhorst was deeply criticized for his very northern European images, but this was probably done in hundreds and even more churches. This is probably his most popular image, and it's recreated in hundreds of ways. I've found images, this exact image, in churches from Alabama to Idaho, so it's been around. This is not the point of my talk. This is not the purpose of this. This is the most important part of this window, and it's down below. And it's probably what we ignore the most. But this is the dedication in memory of our mother, Mary Louisa Elkins. She lived from 1855 to 1904. So the question is, who was Mary Louisa Elkins? And why is this window dedicated to her? What's the deal? All we know is from the church history that she was a Sunday school teacher, and we know that her children paid for the window, and the price back then was about maybe $125, which would have been roughly about $4,000 in today's money. So, what's the deal? And should we just ignore it, or should we go on? Well, I maintain that in order to understand the window of the open tomb, we have to understand who Mary Louisa Elkins was and why this is important and why they're connected. Mary Louisa and her husband Stephen were actually immigrants from England. They came from an area southwest of London. Stephen Elkins they come in through the port of New Orleans. He arrives first, she arrives a few months later. They're in Waco by about 1878, and he is a traveling salesman and a clerk. And by 1883, for certain, they have moved to Temple. They are settled in, and so the town is only really about less than 2 years old by then. But he is working as store clerk and a traveling salesman, and living on commission. And they have 2 children by this time, a son born in 1879 and a girl born in 1883. This is the way Temple looked. This is an 1889 photograph, but this is very similar to what they would have seen in 1883, 1884. The houses were slapdash, put together very quickly, not very impressive at all. Temple would just sort of was plopped right down there in the prairie. This picture is actually probably taken about a block and a half from where they lived on North Main Street, of what is now North Main Street. Okay, just to kind of give you perspective of what we're talking about here, this is where things were. This square down here in the lower left-hand corner, that's where the church was located. This square is where the Temple Daily Telegram is today. And the building that you see is probably right where Sue Mayburn parks her Mercedes. So, don't tell Sue. And just to give you perspective, this is where the city hall is in the upper right-hand corner, and the municipal parking lot. So that kind of helps you get a little perspective there. Stephen Elkins was working for a druggist and a grocery store. He then opens up his own grocery store. This is an ad that was in the Temple Times in 1885. Now, I want you to understand Temple back then, because it was on the railroad, on 2 major rail lines. You had many different cultures, many different people coming in from all over the world, literally coming here because of the railroads. So when you go through the census records and you go through all of the other material there, you find that people are coming in from all over, trying to make a living and trying to build this town. So what you have is this confluence of cultures. You have Germans, Czechs, Italians, Chinese, Scandinavians, and a very interesting Jewish population of immigrant Eastern European Jews, plus Jews who have lived in the United States maybe for 2 or 3 generations. And so they're all here working. And this is also reflective in the groceries that Stephen Elkins is selling. So in this particular ad, you can see that he's selling coffee from South America, Scotch oatmeal, vermicelli, macaroni, sago, which is a starch made from palm trees from the Barbados Caribbean, and he's also selling canned lobsters, mackerel, corned beef, salmon, mushrooms, and French peas. So these, as you can see, this is reflective of the cultures and the many different people who are coming around. They do go back to England briefly in 1889, and while they're over there in 1889, she has another baby. She has a daughter. So she's now coming back. She's got 3 kids. Then in 1890, he drops dead, apparently quite suddenly. And this is the obit that was in the Temple Times in July of 1890, and I wish I had the nerve to write like this. This is what his obit says. He never became Americanized. He cherished the laws, customs, and manner of his native land. He was indifferent to the welfare of our people that rendered him less popular than he would have been. He was honest, sober, and industrious, and he had a disinclination to wash in American society. So he was a jerk, but he didn't drink much. So that's okay. So here's the problem. In 1890, women had no safety net, and their whole identity is bound around men, either their husbands or their fathers. They have nothing else. So she's married to a man who worked on commission, and he's dead. She is completely, utterly lost, and financially, socially, and culturally. She's got nothing except 3 young children. So what she does is she gets to work. She first starts renting out rooms. Now, you saw pictures of that house. You know, you saw what her house looked like. But she's renting out rooms here. She's also baking cakes on the weekend and selling them. And she's teaching music to children. And she's actually teaching music. There was a house directly across the street here, across Main. And that's where she's teaching music in somebody else's house. She's also playing the organ. Now, I didn't clip all of these, but she's also at the same time very, very active.
So she's there in person.
This church in the 1890s had a series of fundraisers, women's teas, luncheons. They were selling things just to keep the church alive, keep the church going financially. And she's very involved in that. Her name keeps popping up. The other thing we do know is that she's teaching Sunday school to children. And so she's constantly teaching that. She's also involved in 1893, 94, there was a big citywide crusade to put Bibles in every home in Temple. And she's part of that committee to get Bibles in the community. So we know that she stayed faithful to her church. She's still wanting to make sure that she's surviving for herself and for her children. In 1904, she contracts typhoid. Her son, by this time, is 25. He's living in Beaumont, working for the Santa Fe Railway. And she goes there to live with him to try to recover from the typhoid, and that's where she dies. I found many, many obits on her in numerous newspapers, all saying basically the same thing, that the people of Temple held her in great esteem, how much she was universally loved and respected, and what a generous and kind woman she was. Quite a contract from her husband's obit. So then I started looking through public records, probate records and tax appraisal records. I wanted to know more about her. Why this window? Who paid for the window? I mean, by this time, her son is 25. He's got a low-level job with the railroad. The daughter is 21. She's a music teacher. And then she's got this 15-year-old daughter. So they don't have any money. Where is this $4,000 in our money? Where is that coming from? And what, why this window and why her? So I did find a probate record on her. She left a modest estate and some household goods. The total was about $1,000 in 1904 money, which would be about $30,000 in our money today. So we're talking about $30,000 estate split 3 ways with the kids. And they've also probably paid $4,000 for this window. Now think about this. This is the only money these kids are ever going to get from their mother. But they're paying $4,000 for this in our money for this window. So this indicates a considerable sacrifice on the part of the children. They're young, they're not wealthy. And so giving this window to the church is really an act of sacrificial giving. And so it's really remarkable when you consider that these kids had the presence of mind to do that at the time. So there's another question then. It pops up. Why did the children choose the empty tomb image? Why that image? So to fully understand the context of all of this, we have to look at Mary Louise's life compared with the story of the empty tomb from the Bible. So I believe that the children probably wanted to leave a message. And they wanted to tell the story of their mother somehow in the building, this building that she never saw completed. But this was a church that she loved and was a church that she was connected with in a very deeply profound way. So why the image of the open tomb? They could have picked any image. They could have picked the Madonna and Child. They could have picked something to do with music, since she was a music teacher, or Jesus with the little children, a nativity scene. They could have picked so many other images from the Bible, but they didn't. They picked the open tomb. So why is that? Well, I believe
We're going to go and you're going to
this is
stay.
Benoit's
You're going to stay. You're
theory,
going to stay. You're a
that the
good girl.
answer is actually in the 1900 census. And here it is. This is the actual 1900 census. There she is at the top, Mary Louisa Elkins. She's head of the household. She's a widow. And there are the three children right below her. And there are her three roomers. The census calls them roomers. These are people who are living with her. She's providing room and board, and they're renting rooms from her. But this 1900 census is interesting because it asks women, how many living children do you have, and how many children did you give birth to? Here's her answer. She has 3 living children, but she gave birth to 7. Okay, so then I went to cemetery records. There were no death certificates or birth certificates back then. Texas was slow to adopt those. So you have to kind of go the back door of this kind of documentation. So I went to the cemetery records, gravedigger records, headstone censuses, and this is what I found. Here they are. Here are the 4 children. That vacant space is probably not vacant. I think that's another baby there. And there is her husband, Stephen, S.A. Elkins, and then there is her grave, Mary Louisa. So what we find is that she gave birth to 4 children between 1880 and 1885 and buried them. They were either stillborn or they lived a few months and then died. So this is a woman who between 1880 and 1890 buried 4 children and her husband, plus she lost her identity as a woman, as a wife. She lost her economic stability. This is a woman who knows grief. This is a woman who has walked with loss, who has known what it's like to be totally wiped out. But still, she manages to pull things together and to survive for the next 14 years and centers her life on the church and on her faith. And so if we take Mary Louisa's life in context of the window, the message that we get is endurance and hope. That's the message here, to stay hopeful, to keep moving, and to stay faithful. And so, what have we learned? Well, I'm not going to speak for Mary Louisa or her children, but I am going to show you what I think the lessons are from her life, from what I have seen, and from her children's lives. That death is not the end, that the grave cannot hold us back, that hope springs from wounded places. Endurance is the key. And for her children, I think the message is acknowledging God's grace in our lives leads to generosity of spirit and sacrificial giving. And there's that phrase again from Hebrews, Therefore, we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. Consider him who endureth such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So, the question now for you, just think about it. You don't have to answer today. But what if we were going to commission a stained glass window for you, reflecting your life, but using a Bible story, a Bible character, a Bible verse? What would it be? What would it look like? What would you say? And you know, I believe that her children knew what they were doing. I think that they fully were aware of their mother's life and what she had endured, and they're saying, this is our mother. So anyway, next week, some guy I used to date is going to talk about St. Luke. And that's the end of my story. Thank you. I'm sorry? Well, the Plockhorst windows, there were 3 original windows. This window, the open tomb, the Good Shepherd window, and the Jesus window over the baptistry were all installed at the same time in 1905.
So where is the Good Shepherd window?
The Good Shepherd window is over the altar, right in the front.
Is it the center window?
That's right, yes, yeah.
And what was the other ones on either side of that window?
They're just called art glass windows,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, ma'am?
One of your first slides said that the children paid for the
Right.
window. I'm assuming there was documentation that those children did, because I'm just wondering if she taught Sunday school, could there have been any gathering of funds through that?
According to the church history, again, compiled by a man I used to date, there actually is a list of the church expenses to build the building. And in that, it specifically says that the Elkins children
Okay.
are paying for the window. The church did not pay for it. Now, the church paid for the window over the baptistry and the Good Shepherd window.
So they don't have that information.
The church over the one over the baptistry, yes, it's to Gray Lewis. And that's a whole other story that I will talk about maybe some other time, you know.
You're talking about the big window in the back to Gray Lewis?
Yes.
I know of Gray Lewis, that is a connection to my family on Stedman's side.
Well, that's a whole other story. I don't want to get into that
Okay,
right now.
I'll
Yeah,
save it.
yeah. Yeah, that's a little tangential to what I'm talking about.
I think I know a little bit of the connection.
Well, yeah, I've done some research on it too, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Just a little minor magic. Okay. But seriously though, this is the point. And I'm guilty of it too. You know, we sit in church and we sit next to a window and we see a name down there. It's like, oh, ho hum, so what? You know, some old rich dude, you know, bought the window, you know, and maybe not. You know, I think there are a couple of rascals who have windows there. But there's some other really important, powerful stories of faith, story of sacrifice, and why this person, even the rascal, why did the family or him pick this particular image? And I think that's part of knowing our own faith story, of understanding other people's faith stories too. And understanding that the artifact itself, the window, or God help us, the rood screen, is not holy in itself. It's the story and the connection to people that makes it important. And so that's our challenge, is to know these stories and to learn from them.
Would you consider doing a book on the windows here?
I'm sorry?
Would you consider doing a book on the windows here?
I've just finished a 50,000 word manuscript in January, and I don't want to talk about books right now. I'm already churning out about 4,000 to 5,000 words a month for the Telegram, and I finished a 50,000 word manuscript, and I was on the search committee last year. I'm tired.
Thank you to the search committee.
I'm tired right now.
What's your manuscript?
Pardon?
What's your manuscript?
I did a centennial history of Temple College.
Oh.
So I don't know when they're going to release it, but that's finish that. Anything else?
About the stained glass windows, that's something we've talked about a long time. Just like this, there's a story much like that behind each window. And it's sort of, I guess, like the old medieval cathedrals of Bible lesson in human relations and learning and studying from it. So it's more than just a pretty piece of glass or artwork. There's the story behind it. I wish we could tell each one. I wish I was about 40, 50 years younger and haven't started. I'm not about to start.
Okay, any other questions? Nothing.
Well, thank you so much, Patty. That was absolutely wonderful. And now all the other people who are going to teach behind you have all quit. Nobody wants to follow. Well, fortunately, we've got the guy you used to date who's going to follow you. So.
Actually, he's a lot better than I am, so I'm the warm-up act, you know.
Look forward to it. Yeah, it'd be great. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we got the recording of that on Zoom, and we'll be able to then save it somehow for future people who work here today.
For people who are gone.
Yeah, people who are gone.
So.
Yes. So we're hoping that we'll be able to capture it, keep it, and somehow provide it for others going forward. That'd be an amazing piece for like a welcome class, maybe parts of many of these. It'd be really fun. Well, thank you again, Patty.
Oh,
And,
my pleasure.
I'm really hopeful that the recording worked. And now we've got a little extra time. I'm going to go get ready for the next service. And this is going to be a big service for those of you who didn't go to the first one. We're going to find out the big reveal.
There's big announcement, so.
Big announcements.
Yeah.
I was floored.
And yeah, such a wonderful choice. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. It was perfect.
I'm sorry?
It was